Welcome back to another episode. I'm sitting here with Miss Gabby Francis.
Hey,
welcome. Now, Gabby is a coach around healing, liberation, and leadership. And we're going to talk about a lot of interesting topics today. We're going to cover so many different things, like, to do with inner work, inner child stuff, like traumas and your story, which is, I think is amazing. That's the first time I saw you was on stage at a meals event. And I was like, wow, like not only is your story like really interesting and emotional for me to listen to and hear, but the way you delivered it was, I was like, wow, she's amazing at what she does. Like, and then we got to know each other more. And then I remember you telling me that I need to just be more in my feminine.
I was leading you to get
yes,
there.
Yeah, because I was just so, I still am in my masculine, but I'm moving more. I'm able to ebb and flow more now than I was a couple of years ago. So thank you for that and helping me, guide me. And every time we talk, it's just so raw and honest, which I really appreciate. And that's actually one thing I want to acknowledge you for real quick is because when I watch your stuff on the internet, it's often, for a lot of people, it's for myself included, it's kind of hard to be myself when I'm on the internet. Like something happens when I'm in front of a camera and I just go into this crazy mode that's not really me. When I watch it back, I'm like, that's not me. But when I watch your stuff, because I know you in real life and I know you on Instagram, like it's literally the same person. And I'm like, wow, I really appreciate that quality of being so authentic. So I just want to acknowledge you for that.
Thanks so much, babe.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that reflection. It's really beautiful. Thank you.
So for people watching, what is your story? Like, of course I know it, but where should we start?
Where do you want to start?
Let's start with your upbringing. Like, how do you think your upbringing had a role to play in what you do now?
Yeah, for sure. And it's weird how to put the pieces together, but I remember like ever since I was a young girl, before I knew that coaching existed or therapy or anything like that, I remember thinking that my dream job would be to be like in an advice column in like a magazine article or something, because I was naturally very good at holding space for people. And for some reason, I don't know, I've just always been drawn to people and I have a natural ability to communicate and hold space. And in terms of my upbringing, it's like, how do I put those pieces together in terms of what I'm doing now? I feel like everything is an initiation, And I actually had an amazing upbringing. My parents, right now, are like my best friends. It wasn't like that when I was younger. And my sister's also one of my best friends. We're so close, but it, again, wasn't like that when I was younger. And to be honest, I didn't have any awareness of the trauma I'd been through up until like 2017 when I had like my awakening. And then I was like, fuck, okay, I need to look at healing. And then I opened the door to like my past, and like I've gained awareness now of, all the trauma that I dismissed in my life. Because I think, and my clients do this as well, we kind of diminish our own pain. And also I had no awareness that I was in pain. Like I was fucking like #1 number. And because I've always been very social and very like outgoing when I was younger and very strong as well. I'm very resilient. And so I think I just got on with stuff all the time. And like, obviously our parents always do the best they can with the tools that they have, but I don't think they understood as well, like how to support me. Like, without going into too much detail around like my sister's story, but she really struggled like way more openly than I did when I was younger. It's interesting because our stories are actually very similar in terms of what we experienced and like the mental pain that we were in, but she experienced it, like she had very obvious mental health issues when we were growing up, and I didn't. And from like the age of 13, I was binge drinking, I was having sex, I was really rebelling. And I actually had this conversation with my mum the other day. We were both like in tears, and I don't know how we got to it, but she asked me, like, was there something that me and your dad could have done, like, better when you were growing up? And bless her, like, I was literally like, you know, reassuring her that she did a great job. And I also said, like, I wish that there could have been an awareness of, like, hey, there's a reason that you're going out getting drunk all the time and like not being kind to yourself. So let's sit down and let's get you a counselor, or let's understand what pain you might be in. And instead I just got punished, grounded all the time, and like phone confiscated and X, Y, and Z, you know? So I didn't really feel understood, and I also didn't understand why I was like that as well. It seemed like everyone around me was, you know, when I was at school, everyone's going out, everyone's drinking, everyone's doing that, but I did feel my parents were quite strict, so I lied a lot when I was growing up. And I think my first, obviously there's the trauma that we experienced just within, like, growing up and our siblings, and again, like, love my dad to pieces, and he is such an emotional man now. Like, when he had cancer for the first time 10 years ago, that was the first time I'd ever seen him cry. And
how old were you there then?
I was still at school, so I think I was about like 16, 17, and that was huge for our family. Everything changed within our family dynamic, and before that, like, it's become very apparent on my healing journey, and I don't want to say anything bad about my dad, but like, he wasn't really emotionally available when I was growing up. Like, he was there, like, we were a family unit, but not very emotionally available. And like, he was very stressed. He had so much going on, and I'm not surprised that he got cancer from the stress that he was in, you know? So yeah, it was, I don't think I had the right emotional support when I was growing up. And still, my parents were so loving. But I do feel like part of, because I just get on with things and I'm like the strong one, that was part of my identity, you know? I don't think my parents thought that there was anything wrong, and I didn't know how to communicate that there was anything wrong. And I think things kind of went downhill when I was 13, I had, I've never spoken about this like publicly, like on a video before. So this feels really edgy. When I was 13, I didn't feel like this trauma happened to me, but I was on and off with this guy for a while, and we were together at the time, and he went out one night and we saw each other, and he borrowed my phone to tell his mum that he was going to stay out later. Gave him a kiss goodbye, didn't think anything of it, and then I didn't hear from him the rest of the weekend, and I came to school on Monday, and everyone was coming up to me in the corridor when the bell rang, being like, "Oh my God, Gabby, are you okay? Like, have you heard what happened to him?" Who I won't name, but basically he'd fallen off a roof, and I just thought that he'd like broken an arm or a leg or something, but he was in hospital on life support. And a week later, I went with his best friend to see him, and he was in a coma. Like, I didn't even recognize him. His brain was like fully swollen. He had like half his skull cut out, and it was a lot to see and witness. And I actually put my life on hold. Like, I would go to the hospital as much as I could, and I just was certain that he was going to get better. And he's alive. I actually don't know where he's at on his health journey. He didn't remember me. And years and years later, this was like a year or two ago, he reached out, and I think it was just like his intuition, his like inner knowing, because we hadn't spoken at all since the accident. And I'd lost touch with his family as well, because I think I got to a point where I was like, okay, I need to get on with my life. I didn't know how to cope with it. And I didn't know that like I was also experiencing pain from that, because it happened to him, like it happened to his family. And I was just a girl, like wasn't even a serious thing at the time. He asked me how we knew each other and if we were ever together, and I said yes. And I shared some memories, which he said he was open to hearing, and it was this really like healing conversation, and that was kind of that. but that was like probably my first memory of like an intense trauma happening. And that happened when I was like 13, 14. And then that's when I started binge drinking and rebelling. And I like pieced that together a few years ago. And then it was like multiple things. I was like in this, I don't know, there's part of my personality that loves to go into the extremes of things. And I think I was just so desperate to like feel intensity because I didn't know how to process my emotions. I didn't know what was going on inside. So I think I was like just drawn to these intense situations that created a lot more trauma for myself, like dangerous situations, dangerous people. And, you know, I created a lot of pain for myself. And I think that was part of my initiation into experiencing a lot from a young age, in order to have I have so much empathy and compassion for people. I feel like it's a superpower of mine where I can just tune into someone and I just know what they're feeling and I can hold them in it and just be so present. And I think that comes from just experiencing many different things over like my short lifespan so far. So that was kind of like my first experience of like big pain, I think.
I share the same sentiments of, you know, being empathetic and compassionate, but I also haven't had extreme trauma like you've experienced, and we're going to go probably a bit deeper into that. But it's fascinating to understand where it comes from and why, right? So for you, when you had this majorly traumatic experience, like what did you make that mean for yourself?
Good question. It ties into my story of like all men leave me. Because he was definitely the first guy I ever felt like I was falling in love with. And what else did I make it mean? You know, I carried so much guilt. I've carried so much guilt around, oh, this is interesting. I love that you asked that question. I'm just putting pieces together. I have a story of like, I'm a bad person. It comes up when I'm triggered and situations happen with friends and I go into I'm a bad person. And I carried that a lot with this situation because afterwards, I don't think I had the capacity to stay in touch and keep being there. And I felt like a bad person for many years. I carried so much guilt around like, could I have stopped it that night, or like losing touch and like not being in support for him or the family. I was a child essentially, but it's like I made it mean that I was a bad person.
When you think about that now, what do you feel?
I've gone through a healing process with it, for sure. But that's only recently, within like the last year. And I know that's not the truth. And I know that I was also doing the best I can. And this is what, I carry that all the time of like, whenever I'm triggered or someone else does something to upset me, I'm like, but they're doing the best they can with the tools they have available for them. That's a Brené Brown quote that I live by. And I'm in acceptance with it at this point, which feels good.
That's good. It must feel good. Because if you're carrying around that story for most of your adult life, it must take a toll on all your relationships, right? Like, how does that show up in your relationships?
I think with sisterhood, it gets triggered because the women in my life are like family to me, and I get so triggered when I feel like I've upset someone or broken a boundary or not been in integrity with something. And I am so hard on myself. People give me this reflection all the time that I really just need to take the pressure off a little bit. But I am so hard on myself, and that can create some really messy situations. Like I've been in a messy situation recently with a sister because I was just convinced that I'm this bad person, and this is why I've been exiled and blah, 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 blah. And I think also that shows up maybe with men in terms of relationships of like maybe not feeling worthy. not feeling worthy of really calling in the kind of relationship that I want. So then I settle with what I know, with what I'm comfortable with, which is a lot of the time emotionally unavailable men. So it's hard. It's hard.
And that links back to as you were describing about your father, how he used to be emotionally unavailable. So do you think there's a link between these guys that you were attracting and your father being emotionally unavailable?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And I bless my dad. It's like, God, are you going to watch this, Dad?
I hope you've healed this with him.
Because we actually haven't really had a conversation about this properly. Yeah, for sure a link. For sure a link. Which I've been trying to heal for the last however many years since I've been on this journey.
Because, I say that, I bring that up because a lot of women that I know from just back home in England, they're not aware of this. Like, they're not aware that they're attracting traits that they saw in their father in these guys. Traits that they necessarily don't want, but they have no awareness about it.
Yeah.
When did you become aware of that?
Probably like 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago, when I first dived into my healing journey. I thought I had one thing to heal, and then I opened the door. I realized so many of my past relationships have been really traumatic with men, and so I had all these stories around men, and we have to take responsibility for what we're choosing. It's not a coincidence that all I've attracted is emotionally unavailable men. And it's not at this point in my life. I've definitely had a mix over the years and different experiences. But actually, part of the work is us taking responsibility for the patterns that we're in, and to really take ownership of what we're calling in. And I think it's so easy to project and blame and be like, why, universe? Why do you keep sending me this? But actually, it's because we're not changing something internal within ourselves. And so I had to look at my part and also understand why am I drawn to that? What's my payoff? What do I get from being with men like that? And really needing to understand that, and also lean into the bigger picture of what I really want in a partnership, and how I want to be met. And then I have to be so on it with my shadow and honoring myself and my needs and my boundaries, so that I don't continue to call in that same energy.
What do you get from, when you did this work, what do you actually get? I'm just curious. What do you get from being attracted to emotionally unavailable men? Because there's a lot of women watching that are probably doing the same thing. And they're like, yes, that's me. Fuck, what's the solution?
Well, firstly, on a subconscious level, we don't realize it, but it makes us feel safe because it's what we're used to. If that's how we grew up with our father figure, it's known. So it feels safe for us. And there's this piece around, okay, so where am I not emotionally available? Where am I not opening my heart? And so it's I don't have to lean in to deep intimacy and be fully seen and met by someone, because that's honestly, it's terrifying to be met in your vulnerability and to have someone really see you and see all the messiness as well. And so I keep myself safe in that sense because I don't have to lean in, because I'm choosing men that also aren't leaning in.
Right, and it's easy to keep them at a distance. He's over there and you just complain about them the whole time.
Yeah, and then it's but you don't even realize, because it's not I'm even keeping them at a distance. If they're being emotionally unavailable, then it's that dismissive avoidance. Then my anxious attachment comes out. And I'm quite a secure person. And in certain relationships, in most of my relationships, I feel secure. But then there's certain people, if there's some kind of unhealthy attachment there, that's when I see my anxious energy coming up. And then it's I want more because they're not giving it. And that's the telltale sign of okay, something's not right here. Something is not right here.
And in your mind, as you're doing that, you're chasing him because he's not letting you in. So you want more. And you think that you're trying to get more intimacy. But actually, that's not really what's happening, is it?
And part of my journey over the last, because I was celibate for a year last year, and then before that, I had a lover for a short space of time, and then I was celibate for like 9 months again before like I'd broken up with a partner. And at the end of last year, I started dating again, and like really putting myself in like really vulnerable situations and really practicing opening my heart to men. And part of the practice, even if I'm still attracting a specific kind of man with or specific qualities, part of the practice is like, okay, now I get to choose to honor myself. Now I get to choose to speak my truth instead of being scared to express myself and like clinging in an unhealthy way, or or like running away. Like I get to express it, I get to be vulnerable, and if I get to ask the questions where I gain clarity on what they're available for, then I get to honor myself and I get to walk away. And every time we do that, we're changing the pattern, we're changing the habit, and we're getting closer to more of what we do want, I find.
But that's easier said than done, though.
Oh my God, absolutely. Because it's like you meet someone, you get excited, and you're like, oh my God, this could be the thing. And then you just, like they've shown you some really good qualities, so then you hang on to it. But then it's like discernment. Use the tools, use the awareness that you have, and honor yourself. It's not fucking easy, but that's part of the path.
So what is it that keeps you honest to do that work? Is it because of you're so clear on what you want in your relationship, or you've had so much pain, now you're like, fuck it, I'm just not going to settle anymore?
I think it's a mix of both. Like I do have clarity on what I want and what I'm available for, and there's this like devil in me that likes to play with like some darker energies, and
as there is in all women.
Yeah, exactly.
In my experience, not you.
But you're not joking.
I'm joking.
And I also think it's like I really practice loving myself now. I hated myself for most of my life, and this is why I allowed so much in past relationships, and why I never respected myself and never honored myself. And I know too much now to look away and turn a blind eye to it, because I know I deserve more, and I do really love myself in this moment. So I get to practice that in my relationships as well.
When you say you hated yourself, what is that? What did that look like for you?
It looked like harming my body, like eating so much shit food. I suffered with bulimia for years, on and off, and no one knew about it. And so, yeah, like harming myself in that way, and binge drinking. Like I would drink myself to oblivion. Like I never had a limit. And it was like the classic Gabby thing to do, to just get like blackout drunk, pass out somewhere, and then wake up later and continue drinking. Like I didn't have an off point.
Oh.
And I took a lot of drugs as well, and chose a lot of toxic people as well. And it's just that constant toxicity, because I didn't know that I was worthy of anything more. And yeah, I was in that place of like hating myself. So I kept choosing those situations for that to be mirrored back to me.
So you were getting blackout drunk, and so you were known as that girl that just, oh yeah, Gabby's just going to fucking pass out as usual. And that was, when you look back at it now, what can you say about that? That was just you trying to escape, or what was it?
Fully. I look back at that version of me now and I'm like, wow, you're in so much pain. So much pain. It makes me feel really sad thinking about that version of myself, because she just was like crying out for help, and she didn't know how to get help, and she was just in a spiral. I would like every time it would just be the same fucking story, and then having shame the next day of like not knowing what had happened, or like who had seen you in that mess, or like, you know, oh God. But I just send so much love to her, because she was just doing the best she could.
How did the bulimia happen? What's the story there with the bulimia?
So I've always struggled with my relationship with my body. And from a young age, that's literally as long as I can remember, my mum and dad, like, they were in great shape, really sporty and, you know, healthy people. And yet they were always on a diet. They were always on another diet and weighing themselves. And me and my sister grew up in that environment. So, and especially, like, that's when, like, the online craze happened as well. And at first it was the magazines and seeing other women looking really tiny and beautiful. And I just never felt good enough. I always felt like, in order for me to have self-worth, I need to be really skinny. Otherwise, no one's going to love me. And I've carried that for so long, and it still creeps up even now. I'm much better at holding myself through it and knowing the truth and giving love to my body. But it still creeps up. It's so ingrained in our culture, I think, for a lot of women. And I think men experience it in a different way as well, with like bulking up, you know. And I've heard a lot of men speak about like their own like body dysmorphia and being self-conscious about their body. But I know for me, yeah, I just like, if I was eating loads of food, then I'd be terrified about like putting on all that weight. So I would just make myself sick so I didn't have to carry it.
So you had that belief, say that again, you had a belief that, what did you say? You said you didn't want to eat food, you wanted to be skinny so that you could feel loved.
Yeah.
And that is, for someone listening who doesn't know why they're going through being bulimic, that's probably like a breath of fresh air for them, right? Because at that time, you probably wasn't aware of the reason why you were doing it. But now, of course, you've done all this healing. You're a coach now, you've healed all of this. So now you can speak about it and not really get that emotional about it. But at a time, I can imagine it was really intense.
Yeah, the thing is, no one knew. Like, I did it for years. And I, like, even when I was, like, living in my family home, or if I was sharing with someone at university, like, I would shut the door and like play music and just be so silent purposely, and then just come out like nothing had happened, and I'd just wipe my face. And I remember people, if I was living with people, they'd be like, "Oh, have you been crying?" I'm like, no, like I'm fine. And I'd had so much shame about saying what was going on. I also didn't think it was an issue. I thought it was normal. I really thought it was normal. It was just my coping mechanism, another one.
What's that? There's a phrase, it's like, what you don't say owns you, or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. Your secrets keep you sick, right?
Yes.
And so that's what was happening to you. And so that went on for a few years.
Oh my God, like from childhood to early 20s.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So what would you say to people who are going through that, like, for your story, like, how did you heal it? Because someone listening, if they know someone who's going through what you went through, what would be the tips you would give them to get through it?
Speak it.
But that's terrifying, though.
Yeah, it's so terrifying. It's so terrifying. I remember the first time I like actually spoke about it properly. I wrote a blog post about it in the first year of my coaching business, when the first time I'd moved to Bali. And that was the first time I told anyone about it, really. And nobody really questioned me on it. Like, I don't think I've had in-depth conversations with people. I've spoken to my sister about it. But it was very liberating to just like name what had happened. And like, I've also had moments of like PTSD episodes where over the last few years, where I have found myself making myself sick, and also carrying so much shame of like, oh my God, why am I doing this? And knowing the awareness around it. And the first thing I do is like, I tell my closest friends, I'm like, I did this happened. I need to name it. I need to hold myself accountable. Like, I'm not sure why. And then I ask for support. And it stops. And I still can notice thoughts be like, you could just make yourself sick. Like, you could, and then I'm like, no. Like, and I really have to like hold myself in that. But it still comes up. It's like, I think with any kind of eating disorder, it's like you're in constant recovery from it. I think we can get to places where we feel like we're fully healed, and then something happens and another trigger comes up, and then we're like, we're so judgmental towards ourselves if we fall back into old coping mechanisms of like, how have I not healed this yet? But it's like just an ongoing process, I feel.
Yeah, I read something recently that said life is like swimming, and if you stop, you drown. Like, so it's like you got to keep doing this work. It's like never ending.
Yeah.
So even though you've healed a lot, there's stuff that still comes up. It's like myself too. Like, actually, I'm not as far along in my journey of inner work as you are, but I'm doing the work.
Of course you are, babe. You're doing the work.
That whole concept of doing the work, like, when did your journey start? Where you're like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm going to become a coach. Like, what was that like?
Well, we're going into the story now. So, okay. So I had that realization back in 2017. And I know you know this, but at the start of 2017, I was arrested. And I was falsely accused of attempted murder. This is what was said to me. Like, I remember that first day that I was arrested, and they're telling me these are attempted murder charges. And it was a year of deep awakening and the darkest time of my life as well. And although I'd had all these things leading up to this moment, I'd never fully acknowledged that I was suffering and that I wasn't happy. And then when this happened, it was like so obvious that I was like just not mentally okay. And I was suffering openly with anxiety, constant panic attacks, insomnia, depression. And I was like, fuck, okay, I'm really in it now. And that was the year that I realized I wanted to become a coach, because I feel like there's so many pieces to this story.
I mean, for me, when I first heard that story, when you told it, when I first met you, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I can't even imagine like what you were feeling in that moment, you know? When as you were describing it, when you got the knock on the door from the police, like my heart was racing sitting in the audience, because I'm like, fuck, I can imagine that. Like, I've been stopped by police before, and it's like your heart just sinks, and like, how did that feel for you?
Firstly, like, I can so thank the resonance, right? Obviously completely different experience for you, but like, you're a black man, and like there's so much connotation with the police and that relationship. So I get it. And you never think that something like this is going to happen to like a middle-class white girl. And I was living and working in London at the time, and I was in my flat by myself. And yeah, there were all these knocks on the door. And it was before I was up, like it was really early. And usually people in my flat would buzz up, and it's a really loud buzzer. So I was like concerned that there wasn't a buzzer, but it was like just before 7 a.m. And I was like, why the fuck is there loads of banging outside the door? It's surely not for me. I opened my bedroom door and I was like, fuck, it's for me. And I went to the door and like opened it a little bit, and I saw 3 police officers were there. My heart just like thumping. My first thought was, are my parents dead? Because they were flying back from Bali that day. I'd come back from Bali the week before, because this is at the very start of, 2017. And they were flying back that day. So I thought, are my parents dead? And I opened the door and they said, are you Gabby Francis? I said, yes. And they said, we're here to arrest you. You're the main suspect of a stabbing that happened back in November.
Whoa.
And I think I was just in shock. Like, I was in total shock. And I think I asked them if they were joking. And they said, no, this is a very serious matter. They came into my flat, searched my flat, took me down into the police car. And I think I was still in shock. But then when we were driving to the police station, that's when I had my first ever panic attack. And I literally thought I was dying. Like, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And so many thoughts were going through my head. Like, I got locked in a police cell for about 6 hours, and I was just waiting in there for a duty solicitor to come down. every single thought possible like went through my head whilst I was in that police cell. And because I would go out and get blackout drunk, I was terrified. Not that I had ever been aggressive towards anyone in my life, but yeah, there were loads of nights that I don't remember. And when the duty solicitor came down and I was about to go in for my interview, she told me these are attempted murder charges, and I fucking lost it. And I was like, this isn't me. Like, I didn't do this. And she told me when this incident happened, and I kind of like was like, whew, because I knew that night I'd gone to that place. It was the first place that we went because it happened in like a bar. And I knew that I'd just had one drink in there, and it was the first place. So I wasn't like really, really drunk. Later on that night, we went to a different club and I got so drunk, and I was like blackout drunk. But where it happened, you know, I could account for that. So I went in and they were asking me all these questions, and like, you doubt yourself. Like, they're asking all these questions from months ago. And bear in mind, I've been out so many times since, so I don't remember all these specific questions about exactly what time we got there and exactly what time we left and exactly what drink that I drank. And like, did I pay with cash or card? Like, I couldn't remember those little details. And yeah, I was released on bail after that, thinking, you know, this is just some crazy misunderstanding. And I remember saying, like, forensically test my clothes, speak to my friends, you know, take my phone. And they refused all of it. And I didn't think that was weird at the time. And I remember like being let out, and it was like some fucking crazy person had just escaped from like a mental asylum, because I was in like Upper Street in Islington, and just like walking around like a crazy person, like hysterically crying, calling my best friends who I was with that night, just saying, what happened that night? They're telling me I stabbed someone. And they were like, Gabby, I was with you the entire time. Nothing happened. And I was like, why are they saying this? Why are they saying this? And yeah, my friends dropped everything to come and be with me, and I was inconsolable. You just never expect something like that to happen to you. And I remember ringing my parents and explaining what happened, just like a complete mess. And I feel so blessed because nobody in my life ever questioned me. And yet I questioned myself. I would have a recurring nightmare that year that I had done this, and I just couldn't remember. And it was like a complete death of my identity and who I was. And I completely lost myself. And like a week later, after I'd been arrested, I had to go and do a lineup. And I thought, you know, I'm going to get my life back after this. There's no way this person's going to pick me out. And I got picked out.
Whoa.
And that's when that's when my dad knew that something is not right here.
Yeah.
I was still so naive in my mind of like, you know, I'm sure this person has no idea. Like, I'm sure this is just mistaken identity. It was just like luck or something. But from the get-go, my dad was like, you're being framed. And I was so in denial of that. And like 6 months later, I was charged with the crime. Told I was going to Crown Court for trial. And this is bizarre to me because they don't have any evidence. That was my breaking point. Like, a few weeks after I was charged, told I was going to trial, that was like the God moment. And I remember just having a full-on fucking breakdown. Like, I remember being at work because I was still working in London. And I just had this conversation with my boss like a week before, and he was like, you know, you've got this, like, you've got all the tools, like I was in a sales role at the time, and I remember being like, yeah, I can do this. And then like a week later, I was waiting for this person in this grand, like, posh hotel in London to have a meeting. And I start having a panic attack and I run out. And then I'm just in the middle of London in this random park, like hysterical, and I can't breathe. And I remember calling my boss, just being like, I need to leave London. I don't feel safe. I need to go home, see my family. And when I went home to see my family, I had this conversation with my dad, and that was when it really hit, like, okay, this is happening for me. This is so fucking crazy, and deep down, I know I have nothing to do with this, And this is happening in order to give me everything I've ever wanted. And I need to hold on to that truth. And it was after that I realized I wanted to become a coach. And so I think the thing that saved me for those next 6 months is I did my transformational coaching diploma in London for the next 5 months. And that really saved me, I think, mentally, and gave me purpose. And of course, it was still hard. Like, court processes are so long and difficult. And I still struggled. But that was how it kind of all came into fruition. And then at the end of the year, I was supposed to have my trial. And I decided I was going to quit my job. And I didn't feel safe in London anymore. So I knew that I wanted to move out of London. And the day before my trial, I get a phone call from my barrister, and he tells me that we've got evidence to prove that you're being framed by corrupt police and the family of the victim. And it was just like this moment of like, what the actual fuck? Everything my dad was saying from the start was true. And yeah, it took like another month or so for me to finally become acquitted. Yeah, it was a very messy year. But like I said, like, it really initiated me into much deeper healing. And if that didn't happen, then I'd still be in London unhappy, not knowing what to do with my life. And actually it put me on my path. It really put me on my path. And like, I've tuned in with spirit over the last few years of asking like, why did this happen? And the message I get every time is like, any other sign that I was getting in terms of like pain or any kind of traumatic experience, my soul was not acknowledging as like, hey, okay, like, this is a sign for you to do some healing and pause and look at your life right now. I was just in my resilience and just kept going. So it needed to be so shocking and so painful to really give me that like big paradigm shift of the world and pull me out of the life that I was in order to put me where I'm in this moment.
That is such a powerful story. And wow, just listening to that again.
It feels edgy to talk about still.
Yeah.
Because I've really lent away from like speaking about that because like at the start, I didn't speak about it. And then when I first initially shared it, like a year into my coaching journey, then it's like I was speaking about it a lot. And then I decided I actually just didn't want to become identified with that story. Yep. I didn't want to be the girl to like just be talking about that incident of what happened, because I feel like what I do is so much more than that, and who I am is so much more than that. And it still feels like a sensitive topic. So yeah, it feels really vulnerable to share all that with you right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And my feedback on that, just as a friend talking to you, is that's something that I've become more aware of, that I look for in people as a sign of trust. So I'm always curious about how someone got into what they're doing now. And so that's your story, right? That's just your truth.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, as you were saying that, how you had that moment of clarity where you're like, this is happening for me, not to me. And you didn't have to read a book to figure that out. That just came to you, right?
I can't remember. Yeah, I think you're right. It was like the conversation with my dad that initiated it, of like, you're going to get through this. Yep. Like, this is happening for a bigger reason. And I really had to keep holding on to some kind of trust. Like, this is before I was like deep in my spiritual path, but I was like holding on to something in the air that was like, this is going to give you everything you've ever wanted. So keep trusting. And it really fucking has. More than I could have ever imagined.
It's so wild, like, because we think about the universe, and I laugh at this because 4 years ago, before I came to Bali, if you had told me, the universe wants you to do this, I'd be like, yeah, get fucked. But actually, looking back at your journey, like, the universe really has guided you here.
Yeah.
And that sounds so woo-woo for me to say, but I don't think spirituality is woo-woo. Can you talk about that? Your personal experience?
Yeah, firstly, like, I you resonate with the word universe, right? I speak about spirit. Other people speak about God, right? And it's all the same thing.
Right.
And I think that all of us have this soul mission. We have like a path that our soul is on. And I think life, like the spiritual growth journey, like it's not woo-woo. Like I don't think of it as woo-woo. I feel like that can be a bit dismissive to like the spiritual journey. And I think there's a lot of connotations that come with like spirituality. But like I see spirituality as a journey of evolution and learning about yourself. And the more you learn about yourself, the more you get to take accountability of what is actually true in you. And I think it takes a lot of courage to acknowledge what is our like deepest truth. Because I think we can be so comfortable in the life that we're in the unhappy partnership, in the unhappy job, in the unhappy location. But it's just, we're comfortable. Like we couldn't possibly leave all of that to follow like the fact that our mind keeps for years has been showing me a life somewhere else, like looking at other people like doing X, Y, and Z and craving that, but not giving ourselves permission to want it. And I think part of the spiritual growth journey is around gaining clarity, creating the space to gain clarity of what your truth is and then acting on it. I think that's what it is. And also so much more. But I was reading a book the other day that described like the spiritual growth journey really well. And in the book, it was describing how in order for us to like function in everyday reality and stay committed to our path and our purpose and our like truest truth, which is what they say, we need our body is like this sophisticated quantum computer. And in order for this computer to function, we need a hardware system and a software system. And the hardware system is our DNA, it's our organs, it's our nervous system. So that all needs to be functioning. And then the software system is all our stories, all our beliefs, everything that our subconscious mind held onto from the ages of like 0 to 7. And it's the lens that we view our world through. And so part of the spiritual growth journey is becoming aware of those programs we have installed in the software and uninstalling the ones that are not serving our highest and don't feel in resonance with where we want to go in our life. And then gaining the awareness to be like, okay, what are the programs I want to install then? What do I want running? And then really holding yourself accountable to moving through that. But it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And I think what I've realized on this journey of spirituality, like I've done so much healing around my nervous system. Like that was like the number one thing after experiencing something so intensely traumatic to my system and experiencing such heavy anxiety and panic attacks for a really long time. It was like, okay, how can I regulate myself? How can I get myself to a healthy body, a healthy mind state, to begin functioning normally again? And it was so interesting because it's like I numbed my entire life and like never had loads of health issues. And then the second I came to Bali and decided to focus on my healing and actually take care of my body and like stop drinking all the time and stop eating crap food, that's when my health plummeted. Loads of acne, like so much digestive issues, like so many body issues and aches and pains. And it's like my body finally was like gave up. It it didn't have to be in fight or flight anymore because I was going into regulating it again. Yeah. But then it's like you also become really sensitive in that process as well because I'm not numbing constantly. So it was a shock to not be able to do all those things that I was doing before and feel so sick in my body. So that was one of the things. And then it's about becoming awareness, creating awareness around your shadow, like your habits and patterns that are actually trapping you and could be like unhealthy, toxic for yourself, for other people, and the willingness to want to change it. And not everyone has that willingness, and not everyone has wants to have that self-awareness. It can be really draining. Like, sometimes I get to the point where I'm like, this is a never-ending journey. Like, and I feel like the more I go deeper and deeper into this path, like, and I feel so much more. It's like the capacity that we have for the lightness and like the expansion of everything that we're stepping into. It's also the same capacity that we have for the darkness that can feel so heavy sometimes. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's all worth it because I am creating a life that I fucking love. I have incredible people in my corner, and I really love who I'm becoming. And I don't regret any of this whatsoever. I'm so grateful for this work, for this path, and yeah, the woman that I'm becoming, because I get to really enjoy this experience now. Life is always going to come with the challenges. It's like when I have clients that say, I just want to be happy. It's like, that is unrealistic because life is going to come with the ups and the downs, and then it's up to you to do the work, to have the tools to hold yourself through it, to be mindful of the lens you're seeing it through. So instead of being that victim, why is this happening to me all the time? It's like, why could this be happening for me? What is the gift? What's the opportunity here? It doesn't take away the pain, doesn't mean it's any less like harmful, but I feel it's way more empowering to live your life through that lens. I went off on a ramble then. I just feel like there was a lot to say.
I love the ramble. I love it. So, you know, absolutely, I agree. And, you know, it's the tools that you have that help you deal with life's crap that is going to happen. So we're going to get shit that we need to deal with, right? So I actually found something that you said interesting. You were talking about how when you started doing your work on yourself, when you came to Bali, your health plummeted. And do you know what? I'm so glad you said that because that's how I feel.
Wow, babe.
Because I'm starting to do the work. Like I don't compare myself, but I'm comparing myself right now to you, just for illustration purposes. Like you're a lot further along on your self-healing journey than I am. And I'm also just beginning to realize that wow, I never had all of these body issues before. Like I got my back issues, like my hip, like I got sciatica when I came to Bali. Like it seems like my health since I came to Bali has just gone downhill. Like I look great, but that's not, you can't feel how someone feels in their body just by looking at them. So this is another thing that I have an issue with the health industry is like people idolize someone's body looking a certain way, but then they don't know how that person feels every day, what they're going through. And my emotional battles, called emotional battles. It's crazy. Like I go into something and I'm like, oh shit, now I'm like, oh fuck, I went into that yesterday and now my back hurts. I'm like, what the hell? And it actually makes me want to not do the work. Yeah. But I understand the only way out is through, right? Totally.
And it's just you're releasing the blockages that were perhaps numbed before. Yeah. And you're creating space. And when it moves, it's going to create sensation until we fully move through it. And it's just how energy works.
And that's why I love your ritual that you do. Do you do that every morning? You dance?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Can you speak more about why that's so important?
Firstly, I fucking love dancing. Who doesn't love putting on a great little boppy tune and just like getting into it, you know? Makes me happy. And it's also part of my embodiment practice because I think for me personally, like the space that I hold, I need to feel super grounded and super in my body. And because I can, like with the work that I do, you know, I do connect to spirit and I do feel energy so intensely, that can sometimes pull us out of our body and out of really having the human experience if you're all up in the other realms. And for me, dancing and doing things that bring me into my body and that shift energy if I'm feeling a bit stagnant or like it really does work. It's such simple medicine, but it lightens your mood. And especially like if I'm moving through anything heavy as well, I'll help to like shift things because any kind of movement in the body, this is why exercise is so great as well. You're going to help clearing whatever needs to be cleared. And it's I think a lot of us live our life being actually quite dissociated, just like going with the motions and not being fully here, fully present, fully aware. And so I think it's really important to be doing things daily that bring you back into your body, because then it's like that's how you regulate yourself. That's how healing occurs, because all trauma lives in the body. It's all stored within our cells, within our organs. And this is why, therapy is great. Talking therapy is great because we gain the awareness, and that creates some releases in that sense. But somatic work is body work, and energy work as well. Like, we need that in order to shift the trauma out of ourselves. Otherwise, we are still carrying it in our DNA. And then we're still going to have the same patterns creeping up. And we wonder why we stay stuck in the same self-sabotaging habits and the same beliefs of like, we might not be worthy or whatever it is, fill in the blank. And it's because we're not moving it out of our body. We're not shifting it. And so I know for me, it's so important to be moving my body every day and shifting the energy and feeling connected. Because also it's like, our body is the bridge between heaven and earth. And I'm so connected to the shamanic realms and like the earth, and also the cosmic realms and spirit. And so it's like we can just become that clear channel where we get to move all of that energy through us and then be in service with that, in that space as well, in a really embodied way. And I actually think embodiment is key to authenticity as well. And mm-hmm. I do get that reflection a lot, of that people feel that I'm very authentic, and I think that's because I'm grounded. I feel I make sure that I feel grounded, and I think that people can feel that.
Absolutely, I feel that. And it's also because they have that trait too, so they can see it in you.
Exactly, the
real recognize real, right?
Yeah.
So what do you mean by embodiment?
I mean, embodiment, connection to the body.
Okay.
And embodiment, I also see embodiment as integrity as well, in the sense of whatever you are sharing with the world or teaching or whatever it is. I think embodiment is like, you want to be the real embodiment of it. You don't want it to be fake. You don't want it to be... it's like the coaching industry is not regulated, and I think there's a lot of people that have come into this. I'm not saying that everyone has to be regulated at all or have a specific diploma or degree, but I think it also helps with just knowing what you're sharing. And I've had awful experiences with coaches before that I was like, whoa. Like, they're not embodied in what they're teaching at all. And it's created really awful experiences for me. And like, I know so many other people that have had similar experiences in the coaching world, and that teacher or that mentor not being fully embodied in what they teach. And so for me, it's like embodiment is that truth in being authentic to and in integrity to what you're speaking about, and it coming from that true passion and that true joy, and trusting yourself to share that knowledge and that wisdom as well, and having it just flow through you. I think that's embodiment, like being a channel of your gifts, of your magic. Yeah.
So your experiences, you're basically coaching other people through similar things, right? Like trauma, stuff like that. You're helping them heal. So you're able to do that because you know what it feels like to go through that. Is that correct?
Yes, I guess. I think we've all experienced trauma, and like I don't think we need to compare ourselves if someone's had like really extreme trauma or like the big T trauma or the little T trauma, because your body still has the same reaction. It's still that fight or flight, and it's still the same stories, and it's still the same fear. It really all comes back to death, of like being left alone and being exiled because of X, Y, and Z, because of this situation happening or what this person has done or whatever it is. And yeah, I'm able even if people think that they haven't got trauma and they come to me, but it's like they've just been drawn to work with me, or it's all revealed. Like, it's, even if people are like, I know something's not right, but I don't know what it is. And when you're in a space that facilitates, like creates that safety to go deeper into that person's experience, whether or not I'm holding space coaching with like speaking, or whether it's in a ceremonial setting and it's more like energy, it all comes up. We all have pain because we're human, stored within us.
Absolutely.
And I don't necessarily think that I'm like any better because like I've been through trauma, because I feel like like I said, we've all been through trauma.
Yeah. But you've healed yours.
It's not necessarily.
Not
like,
not 100%, but more than most.
There are always so many more layers. I'm just like, get to another layer every time. I'm like, fuck, here we go again, you know? Like, I definitely don't feel like I've healed my shit. Not at all. And like, I'm still like in such a like open, like humble space with my teachers and my space holders, like who hold me, because I need that in order to do what I'm doing. And I feel I'm able to take my clients to the depths because I am willing to go to the depths myself and keep going there. And like I said, like I've always been drawn to kind of like extreme situations. And that's the same with my healing experiences as well. I go into these extreme healing experiences that a lot of people are like, what the fuck? But I want to go there because it means that I'm a better space holder, and I can hold my clients through that if and when that comes up.
That's brilliant that what you just said. You said you still don't feel like you've healed, but you're helping people with this, with healing was one aspect of what you do, right? And so that's interesting to me as you say that, because obviously there's a thing called imposter syndrome. So it's like, if you've solved this problem, then you can help other people who haven't solved this problem, right? But if you're still on the journey, I'm asking you, like, do you ever feel the imposter syndrome come up?
Weirdly, no, because like we touched on this just before the call, this started. But I just have this knowing this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, where maybe I'm trying to think if there's been times. No, I don't think so. Like, I'm in awe at other space holders who I'm like, wow, like, the way you hold space is amazing. And then I'm inspired by that. But it's also like, wow, I hold space in that, with that kind of magic as well. I just trust myself deeply. And I know that this is one of my gifts. And when I hold space for people, whether or not it's in a group or if it's one-on-one, like I said to you, like, I feel so energized. Like I've just taken some kind of drug. And it makes me feel ecstatic. And like definitely at the start, I know when I first started coaching, I had my first few clients, I would overthink and I'd like write questions down of like, what do I ask? I haven't done that for years because it's literally just about being present with that person. Like every single soul is completely different and unique. And there isn't a one size fits all for healing. And so you have to meet every soul with complete presence. Like every time before I hold space, I like cut all my shit, cut all the cords to like any of the drama in my life. And I'm just fully there with that person and I'm just feeling them and I'm just present with them. And I trust myself to ask what needs to be asked. And magic unfolds in that space of just complete trust. And I know like the energy in my body that I feel, it's because I'm supposed to be doing this. So I don't question myself because I know that I'm great at what I do. Maybe it's uncomfortable for people to hear that as well. And it makes me slightly uncomfortable maybe saying that. I am worrying about people's judgment with that of like, oh, like my ego or something. But also, I think you need to know your genius.
Yes. And
that is one of my, it's part of my genius. That's what I do really well, and I love it. And it lights me up and it brings me so much joy and passion and purpose in my life. And I want to share that.
I can see in your, I mean, part of the reason why you're here is because you just, everything about you is like, you just love life. And that is so magnetic to clients. So I'm sure your business is doing amazingly well. I mean, I know it is, and that's because of how you are, right? Like you're just enjoying life, and you're also being very real and authentic and honest, and you're trusting yourself, and that's magnetic to people because they're like, Gabby, I see them in your stories, like they reply and stuff, the testimonials you get, like your clients like fucking adore you, and that's because of who you're being, because of all the work you're doing. So congratulate you on that as well.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
And I adore my clients. Like I feel like my clients give me just as much as I give them. Like they're all mirrors. We're all mirrors of each other. And I only work with soulmate dream clients. And I think that's why I get to enjoy my life so much, because it doesn't feel draining to me. You know, I love who I'm showing up for. And I love supporting women to step into their power and their purpose, to see their own genius and gifts, to trust themselves, to really be in their light and share it with the world.
It's fascinating how I'm reflecting on the fact that you said you don't really feel imposter syndrome, because that's something that I spoke with Emil about, and I always feel imposter syndrome. Not always. I don't feel imposter syndrome when I'm doing the podcast. Actually, this is probably to your point of when you do coaching, you don't feel it. It gives you energy. Like this along with the comedy, like this gives me energy. And coaching dream clients also does as well, because I know that I can help them.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, because imposter syndrome is normal, but it's only normal if you're doing. I don't know. What do you think about people who feel imposter syndrome? I'm sure maybe you have clients who feel imposter syndrome. What do you think about that? What do you think about what that means for them? Are they doing the right thing, or?
I think it's normal to have fear around and question things. And stepping into something new, perhaps, or especially for people that have experienced trauma in their life, big or small. It's such a subconscious thing, but we actually don't want to be seen. We don't want to be in the spotlight, because if we're in the spotlight, if we're being fully seen for who we are in all our power, that means we're a bigger target for danger. So actually, like, holding on to the story of like the imposter syndrome, it like keeps you safe in a way, because you don't have to fully step into your power, and you can still question things, and you can still stay a little bit small. So I think it keeps you safe in a way.
I'm laughing because I can relate that to jiu-jitsu, because when I first started training, I was just a newbie, like no responsibility, no expectations. He's a fucking newbie, like he's gonna be shit. Yeah, all newbies are shit. I was like, I loved that. I fucking loved it. As soon as I got the blue belt, the next rank up, now I got responsibilities, I got expectations, like people are trying to kill me, like like now there's all this put on me now, and I kind of went through a phase where I wasn't enjoying that, because I had to adapt to it. I'm like, fuck, I
fucking get it. By the way, I cried so much at that video of you getting that belt.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. But I also resonate with this, because where I got imposter syndrome was my pole dancing, which I've stopped for the time being because of injuries last year, and I've just fear of like, it's such
falling
a
on your head.
Yeah, it's happened. But I remember when I first started, I wasn't like you. Like when I first started, because I used to professionally dance for like a decade of my life, I had all these expectations of how I needed to be really fucking good straight away. And holy shit, like the first few lessons, I was like, oh my God, this is so hard. And I wasn't enjoying it. I was miserable in these lessons and these sessions. And my teacher was like, Gabby, take the pressure off. Just like be here with the intention to enjoy yourself, instead of like needing to be perfect in everything. Yep. And then I started to enjoy it. And then I started to learn and pick things up really easily. But I definitely had it because I was always looking at, oh my God, these people are amazing. Like, I'm never going to be like them. So I so get it.
But that whole thought process, that story of, oh, these people are amazing, I'm never going to be like them. Like, I've definitely done this a lot in my life, and I still do it, and I have to catch myself when I go into comparison mode and just start telling myself a disempowering story. Actually, I wrote down last night, like, I've been telling myself disempowering stories. It's time to let them go, and tell myself an empowering story. But that all takes awareness, though. But that's great that you have the awareness that you can notice that, and now you can. So what's the process that you take to actually enjoy it?
To enjoy,
instead of being in your head and comparing and.
Oh, don't get me wrong. You know, it's interesting when you said the comparing. I realized, like, actually, I can fall into comparison sometimes. It's not that I don't feel like I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, or I don't have the strength or the abilities to hold the space that I'm holding, but it's more so I look at other coaches and I see them launch something else, and I'm like, oh, should I be doing something else? Should I be like, oh God, like, they show up all the time, and like, am I not like, and it's just getting into that. So I definitely have comparison coming up around that, because I feel, especially like in Bali, everyone and their fucking dog is a coach, you know? Yeah. And I think it feels very like saturated here. Whereas I think in reality, like if I was to go back to Europe, it doesn't feel as like, as crowded. So I feel maybe it's like less comparison. And I've stopped, like I mute a lot of people online now, because I think for me to stay in embodiment, in my genius, I don't want to look at other people and what they're doing, because it triggers me. And I can question myself in that sense of thinking I need to do more, or, you know. So I mute people. That's a little trick that I do.
Very healthy.
Yeah. What was the other?
No,
part
just like how do you get out of like the comparison mode and take the pressure off yourself? Because when you mentioned when you went to pole dancing, you had to perform because you had all these expectations. Like how do you get out of that headspace?
Okay, number one thing that I do is rituals and practices with the earth. That is the number one thing for me that regulates me. Like if I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm making up all these stories, or like, and I'm just not like in my power, you know, I'm giving my power away to someone or something, whatever it may be. For me to come back to my truth, my alignment, I have to spend time in nature. I have to communicate with spirit. I have to sit on the earth. I have to breathe and give that space to myself, because it's medicine to me. It brings me home every time. Like whenever I'm, and like I said to you, I've had a lot on the last like month or two, and the thing that helps me every single time and reminds me of who I am, it is those practices that actually just feel so simple, but we forget the medicine that nature has for us. And it's all around, not if you're living in the city, but we really forget that as a human species. And this is why I love shamanic work so much, because it's really about seeing life as sacred, remembering that all things are sacred, like everything in nature and like everything around us in our environment and spirit, and the earth as a whole, it's all sacred. And we get to heal and come home to ourselves through the realignment of working with energy and nature. Mother Nature, she knows, and our body knows how to heal itself. So when we put ourselves back in that situation, back in that environment with nature, it's like the body wakes up this ancient wisdom. And I feel it's like this inner knowing that comes up. Maybe it's our intuition or something higher coming through, whatever you resonate with. But I feel that is the medicine that brings me clarity of what my truth actually is.
So you're basically, I've seen you do this and go into like the waterfalls. So you just sit there and meditate. Is that what you were talking about? Just being in nature, or is it specifically meditating in nature, or just being in nature in general?
Being in nature in general. It's different things, you know, just lying on the earth and just feeling the earth.
Yep.
Meditating on the earth. Journaling, just like speaking out loud to spirit and plants. And maybe that's crazy, but that's what I do to really connect myself. And actually just like not bringing my phone, like this weekend just gone, I went away with a friend of mine, and we went to a different part of Bali, and we were staying in this place that had private access to the beach. No one else was staying there. And so we were literally just in this white sand, just like naked, just like sitting there, just like talking, like even just being with other people. Like, it is so recharging. And especially for women, because actually we have this connection with our womb. It's like holds, like it's this water within our womb of the emotion. It's like this portal. And we are so connected to the elements. Men are as well, for sure. But that's, again, part of shamanic work. And when you're in the elements, they can recharge us. So being in water, or bringing awareness to feeling the wind, feeling the air, or being with fire and breathing in that power, that heat, it's cleansing and it's healing. And that is what brings us home. It's literally being present with our surroundings and nature, and not distracting ourselves with anything else when we're there.
But how does someone do that who's so busy, they got so much going on? How does someone, because, you know, people have excuses, as you're very aware. So how can someone do that, like on a weekly basis or even twice a month, you know?
You really need to weigh up what's important to you. What do you value most in life? What do you value most in life? And if it is wanting more of that peace or nature or spaciousness, it's like holding yourself to make that space. Only you can do that. No one's going to do it for you. Like, if you have the awareness that this is actually a really important value for me, okay, so make the time. Walk to the park. Lean on a tree. Breathe, you know, on your lunch break. Make the time. And if it's not important enough, then you won't. You have to decide that it's time to change and that it is important to you. Because I think, we make the excuse all the time of like I used to do that when I was first getting into meditation years ago. I just don't have the time. I try to meditate every day, but I don't. My clients, every single one of them says the same thing as well. And it comes down to you and what you value more. And the more you learn about what that gives you, the more awareness you have around like how much it serves you and how it does feel like medicine, the more you will do it. And sure, we come out of alignment and we forget, and then you need to go into it again. You need to have the strength to come back to again, like I said, it's having the courage to follow your truth and not questioning it.
That's a great quote from Gabby Francis. Having the courage to follow your truth and not question it. It's fitting. I always think that things are coincidences. I remember before I went to a tarot card reader here in Bali, and she was pulling out all these cards, and every card was bang on the money, like what I want in my life. And I was like, fuck, this is such a coincidence. And then she like slammed her hands on the table and she's like, darling, nothing's a coincidence. I was like, what? Like, wow, nothing's a coincidence. So you just saying that's literally where I'm at right now in my life. Like, just learning to trust myself. Because I did this before, but then I kind of went into a little like a hole where I'm not trusting myself. So now what you just said is literally like speaking to me. I'm like, that's a coincidence. Gabby just said that, but it's not, you know?
I'm penetrating you with this right now.
And also I want to share this too. So sometimes I'll be going through something, and I mean, we won't like speak, but I see you on Instagram and stuff, and then you post something and then you write a caption and it's almost like exactly to the T of what I need to hear at that moment. I'm like, you're so tuned in with everything, like the spirit. You're so tuned in. That's just my perception of you.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and you're tuned in with your body as well. Like you're very aware of how you feel. So like, for example, I remember one time we were going to dinner and you said something about how you're on your bleed and you can't come. No, you did show up. I remember me and Nathan, we went out to dinner. You were like, oh, if this was another time, I wouldn't be able to make it, you know? And I was like, wow, she's really in tune with how she feels. That's a really rare thing in society. You know, you literally wouldn't show up to dinner because of how you feel, because of your period.
Yeah.
Like, and you openly talk about period and how it's related to everything we experience as women.
Totally. Totally. And on that, like, when I did show up for dinner and I named that, it was like to preface for you guys the kind of energy that I'm in, and that, like, needing a little bit more softness and you know, because I know what I need when I'm bleeding or when whatever phase of my cycle. And I just wanted to bring it back to what you were saying about the coincidence piece, and then we can follow that. Something came up. It was like, I really wanted to just like drum in that nothing is a coincidence, and the things that our brain keeps thinking about, or that our body is continuing like being pulled to, or like all these synchronicities keep happening of like, all these people keep naming this experience to us, right? That is all happening for a reason, and we need to follow it because it's actually where our purpose is. It's where our purpose is. None of these things are a coincidence. And I just wanted to say that just for people listening who like try and just make the excuses for their desires and don't want to go after them, even if it's something that keeps creeping up. It's not by accident. It is showing you where you need to go, where your soul wants you to go, where you will become most alive. I just wanted to drum that in because it really is the truth. Really is the truth. Like when I was younger, I thought I was a witch. Fully believed I was a witch. I would make up spells. I would speak to things that weren't there. And then you forget about it, you know, and you get on with your life and you become an adult and then you have all these responsibilities. But then I just come back to, like, I feel like I'm a witch, you know, like I do the same thing now. And we come back to like what really lit us up as children. And again, that's a little in of like your purpose and your path. And really trusting yourself to follow that joy again as an adult, instead of having judgments around it of like, oh, I can't do that because I do this now, or, you know. I just wanted to name that.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And that is the art of letting go, right? It's, I can't do what I want to do because I got this.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you can let go of that and then do this. Maybe, this is providing the income, you let go of it, and then now you're not making any money, but then you're doing something you love and that will eventually make money, for example, right? Because a lot of people use that as an excuse of like, oh, got to pay the bills. And of course that's true, but I
feel like the spirit will support you when you courageously take the leaps forward. You got to take risks in life. You have to go for it. Otherwise you will live a life that just feels a bit dull, a bit lifeless. I think you've got to really stand for what you want, because nobody else is going to.
What about people that are kind of in that depression state where they're not really caring about anything? I was in that state like 5 months ago, 4 months ago. Just like, I just don't care about anything. I just took a break from everything. I was like, I think I told you about that. I was like, I'm done. What would you say to those people?
It comes back to simple medicine, like, and I get it because I can still fall into those dark places, right? And it comes back to simple medicine. Like a shaman will ask you, if someone's depressed, they will say, when was the last time you danced and you sang? It comes back to really purposely bringing just the simple joys in life back. Walking outside, walking outside, putting on a song and dancing to it, just opening your voice and singing like a child, not giving a fuck about what it sounds like. That's the medicine that starts to awaken people again. Like I know, like I've worked with clients who have depression, and I have friends that have depression, and every single time they decide to be like, okay, fuck this, I've had enough. And they decide to go outside and go for a walk. And then they listen to some music and like allow themselves to have a little dance. They automatically feel so much better. It's in the simple medicine. But I know when we're like feeling depressed, it's just we have no energy to want to do anything. And we think the world is against us. And we're full in victim. And it's about asking for the support for someone to just pull you out into nature, into some joy. It's simple, but we overthink it. We overthink it. And this is why so many people are on medication and don't see a way out of it. Because they're trapped in their life. And a lot of people don't live in like a shamanic mindset of making time and space for singing, for playing, for dance, for nature. That's why we're all so depressed, because we're lacking in that nourishment.
Well said. And fun is one of your values, I would assume.
It actually is. It is. It's play.
Play.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, as you can see, it's funny because when I look at the people that I attract onto the show, we all share the similar values. So like, plays also one of mine. It's like quite important to me. Like I have to do something that gives me energy, fill my cup up. And so that's something that if you're listening to this, that's really important to cultivate, is doing fun things, stuff that's fun.
Yeah.
Because when I realized that my life was getting too serious was when I decided to do stand-up comedy. I was like, fuck, I'm getting really serious. I'm like not really laughing that much, and everything people say is like really serious. You were going to say something? Oh,
babe, you just like hit a nerve. It's like the seriousness is the trap of life. Seriousness. When we're too serious in our life, that also means that something's wrong. And we need to engage in play without any judgment, without any guilt, and allow that, because it's medicine. It is medicine. And also play helps us integrate all the heavy stuff, all the healing that we're doing. You know, laughter, such medicine. It really is. We need it. It's
like natural drugs. There's one of my favorite comedians, Jimmy Carr. Do you know Jimmy Carr?
I love Jimmy Carr.
Yeah, he said I'm like a legal drug dealer, and the drugs are on you. Well, I just activate them in you, like by laughing, you know, with dopamine, all that stuff. The what's it called, the oxytocin, and laughing every day is so important. Like, I judge myself a lot for smiling too much.
What?
And because this is something that Jimmy Carr said on his in his book, he said you need to know who you are and how you're perceived. So I was thinking about how I'm perceived. And I mentioned to, Talia, I mentioned that I laugh a lot. I smile a lot. She's like, yeah, you're always smiling. And then Felix, the acting coach, was like, yeah, you're always smiling. And so I started to judge myself like, fuck, is that a bad thing? Like, And what do you judge yourself for about anything?
Oh, absolutely. By the way, let me just say, I've actually never thought of you as like, Erin's always smiling.
Really?
Yeah, that's never come up in my mind. But I'm thinking about it now, and you've always got a grin on your face, but it's not a bad thing.
Okay, cool, thanks.
What do I judge myself for? A lot. I think it's really easy to judge ourselves. What are the things that are coming up? I have a perfectionist story. Judge myself if things aren't like perfect. I can judge myself if I don't communicate something perfectly to someone that I love. I judge myself if I've fallen into bad habits. And I'm like, fuck, why am I still doing this? And even I can judge myself with like certain like men that I choose, of like, how am I still choosing this, I don't think there's anything specifically around like my appearance that I come back to all the time. I'm in quite a loving place generally with my body, and I think how I'm perceived, although there's definitely the triggers. Like last week I was feeling sensitive around how I looked. I don't have like a specific, like, I smile all the time, then I question it, Nothing else is coming on that. Maybe there's more, but.
Do you feel like your openness and your realness is what attracts people to you? Do you think that's part of your genius, is the fact that you're able to be vulnerable and open and real with people?
Yeah, I feel like there's something magnetic about that. And I think people are drawn to, like, if someone is able to be vulnerable and authentic, then it's like there's that safety and that trust there. That's how I feel when I feel like people are super authentic. I'm like, wow, I can really trust this person. And I definitely think that that is something, I've been blessed to attract so many amazing people into my life. And I think that's because, yeah, being comfortable with like, being myself.
And you do all these things that help you to love yourself. So you're filling your cup up every day with all these practices that you're doing. And that's helping you show up better for your clients and just be in your own power. Like, you can be vulnerable, but you can also help them get where they want to be. You know, you're not like a total mess where you're like, just, it was all my shit. You know, like.
Totally. And, you know, something I'll say on vulnerability, right? Because, this is interesting, because I think, yeah, reflections I've had from people, it's like, oh, you're so vulnerable and you're so authentic.
Yep.
And actually, if I go a layer deeper, it's like, because I find that really easy. There's like a certain layer and I guess level. And there's something underneath that is like the really messy, vulnerable truth of how I might be feeling or where I'm at. And expressing that in relationships with certain people can be really hard. And I struggle with that level of vulnerability and authenticity, like really bearing my heart, because I like to protect my heart. And I think there's this another layer to vulnerability and authenticity when it comes to like fully bearing your raw, tender heart to someone, whether or not that's romantic or platonic. It doesn't matter. But I've struggled with that. Like I said at the start of this, you know, in terms of relationships with men, it's like being fully seen can be terrifying.
Yeah.
And so that's been a practice for me this last year of like really leaning in to say the deeper thing and the more vulnerable thing. Because I can do, for me, on the surface, for other people, like, it's like, whoa, that's so authentic. And I can have those kinds of conversations quite easily.
Right.
But there's like another layer.
Yeah.
And if I'm being really honest with myself, like, I still struggle. Like, it's still really hard.
Yeah.
But for other people, like, it's how they view me, they wouldn't think that. But that is actually the truth.
And that's so refreshing to hear from a coach, you know, that you're struggling with something still, because a lot of people in the coaching space, they seem like they have it all figured out. And that actually exacerbates the problem in the people they're helping. Because, for example, I was looking up at people like, wow, they got it all figured out. I bet they don't have any problems. Like, it's just what they're presenting makes it look like that. And it makes me feel even more inadequate because, fuck, if that's a level, yeah, fucking hell, I ain't going to get there. How am I going to get there? You know? And so what you're saying is it's the fear of intimacy that I mean, I openly say I also have that too. And I'd add to that, I think it's, I don't know, I'd ask you actually, do you think it's choosing the right person to be intimate with? Because you could be intimate with someone, let's say, who's emotionally unavailable, but then that's actually making it worse in a way because it's not really the person that you want to be with because you know it's not really going to work. Do you feel like that too? Yes,
like, and it also comes with like, say like a family member or a friend who maybe isn't on the same path as you and doesn't necessarily have awareness around like how to communicate maybe in a more conscious, loving way, right? It is difficult to have those kinds of conversations with people that can't hear it. And also it's an opportunity to practice as well. I think everything is very dependent on the situation and the person and the energy, the space that you're in, because I think you can lean in with someone who perhaps doesn't have the same like tools in their toolbox, but you get to set the example, you get to set the tone from an open heart and a loving space. And then it's actually so much easier for them to respond in that way because you're setting the tone in that way. And again, like I've still practiced with men opening and being super vulnerable, even when they can't fully hear it, because it feels honoring to where I'm at in that moment. And there's other times that I'm like, nothing needs to be said. Nothing needs to be said, because it's actually not about them. It's about me. And I know, like, I've gone through my process. So I think it's very dependent.
What do you look for in a man now? Now that you've healed? Oh, sorry to go a bit, it's a bit personal, but like, what? I'm just curious, like, what for people listening, because there's a lot of women that listen to this, and you know, for what about female empowerment?
Why'd you say it in that tone? Called you on that one,
I don't know why I said that in that tone, actually. I don't know, actually. It's just something I always say. Like, I said it with Talia. I was like, oh, you love female empowerment? And she started laughing, so I just thought, it's funny.
And maybe that's bringing up something for you around your own femininity.
Maybe. But I feel like I'm sometimes too feminine.
Oh.
Yeah, it's weird. Maybe I'm still coming across as masculine, but yeah, I don't know. Ever since you told me about that conversation at Elevate at the event, I realized that I started paying attention more to how you show up and then how I was showing up. And I could see, I'd look at my videos and I'd just turn away. Like, I wouldn't even want to watch them, because I was like, oh, it's just too much in this masculine. Like, he's not being empathetic, he's not being compassionate towards his audience, like the people watching. And so I learned a lot from that from you.
Oh, thanks, babe.
Because the way you talk, just like, yeah, I'm not a woman, but you're like, yeah, like, you know?
I think it's just coming from the heart, you know? And that's like the embodiment for a man to like really tap into their femininity. I think it's, tuning into the heart space, which is where women lead from, more so the heart and the womb. And men aren't necessarily as in touch. That's not their emotional center. Yeah. You know,
we're in our head.
You're in your head, but you're also in your sex center. Men actually think from their dick. That's what the saying comes from that, but like, it's just so primal for men. Yeah. That's where you guys think from. And women, we're more from our heart space. Yeah. So I think for a man to like embody more of like his femininity, it's like tuning into the heart, allowing yourself to feel a little bit more, going from there. So
are you like in your masculine when it comes to men? Like, what kind of men do you go for? Do you kind of go for like balanced men or like more feminine men?
I've gone for a real mix, babe. Like, I feel like I hold a balance of feminine and masculine energies, and I think you have to when you're running a business as well. You need that masculine energy for that penetration to get things done and hold some kind of framework and structure. But I am super feminine. And especially in my relationships with men, I am super feminine. And a few years ago, my partner, I was with a man who was definitely more on his feminine side. And I'd never received love from a man like I received love from him. But I also didn't trust him. Like, whenever it came to him, because I felt I couldn't be in my feminine because he was in his feminine. Like, it was like the polarity wasn't working. And so I think I like dismissed his, when he wanted to step up in that masculine. It's like I was in that role, you know? Right. And I think being in tantric communities over the last few years, there tends to be like a lot more men like connected to their femininity, which isn't a bad thing. But I also know I'm attracted to very masculine men because I really love being able to fully surrender and melt into that safety. And definitely the men that I've dated over the last few months have been like very masculine in that like provider mode. And that is what I want. Yep. And it's about, for women, if we want to call in that like protector and that divine masculine, right? We need to be able to be receptive and lean back and lead from our heart and love and be that example, set the tone for that, instead of trying to like control and force things, because that's the penetration that needs to come from the man. And so I've loved dating recently and just leaning back and allowing men to like plan the dates, tell me where I'm going at what time, or picking me up, paying, And it's such like traditional, like simple things, but it really turns me on. Like it feels like it creates this safety within me to just completely melt and just be in this like feminine mess that a lot of masculine men want as well. That's the polarity, that's the magnetism. So I've been in my practicing of like leaning back and receiving and being in that feminine space when it comes to dating.
Very powerful. And that's there's a book there by your favorite author, Michael Singer.
Oh, I love him.
Surrender Experiment. Have you read that?
I actually haven't.
So that's just about, like you're doing, surrendering, you know? And it's just going with the flow of life, and it's more joyful that way, right? So in closing, I wanted to touch on something that you said earlier about your father, because we spoke about his emotional unavailability at the start, and now he's obviously a great guy and he's changed, right? He's overcome that. And so you said he battled with cancer. What was that? What was that like for you, experiencing that at such a young age? You were 16?
Traumatic. It was really difficult to see. I remember going in after he'd had this surgery, one of the first surgeries, and like he just looked like green, yellow, like didn't look like him. And it was scary to think that I might lose him at such a young age. But he got over that, and like he did radiotherapy, and he was okay. And you know, the interesting thing, years and years like later, he would always speak as if he doesn't think he's going to be around much longer, and that the cancer's probably going to come back. And the last time I was in the UK, which was in the end of 2019, I remember like walking with my dad. We were in town, and we were having this conversation, and I can't remember what I was talking about, but he was like, yeah, you know, if I'm around. I was like, stop saying that. Like, why do you speak like that? And I didn't know at that point, but he was having tests again for cancer. And I found out, at the start of 2020, that he had a cancer diagnosis again. And initially it was lung cancer, which is crazy because he's never smoked a cigarette in his life. And that was a lot. He went for a surgery. They said they got rid of it all, great. Then a week later, my dad tells me that he has technically a terminal cancer diagnosis, which meant that from his prostate cancer 10 years ago, it had started to spread into his bones. And that was a lot to receive. And so hard being so far away from him as well. But I feel so lucky to have a father who is so open to, you know, holistic healing. And I think he's seen how I've transformed my life. And I know he said to me it's inspired him. Like, I remember when I first started coaching, he's told me this. He didn't think that I'd be successful. He didn't see how I was, not that I wasn't capable, but he didn't see how I was going to make it work as like setting up a business from scratch, because I had no idea how. I was just winging it. And I think he's seen how I've changed my life and the woman that I've become. And so, you know, from the get-go, we had so many conversations about meditation, breath work, diet, fasting, and it was so inspiring to see him go into all of that. Like, I sent him to like my energy healers as well, like online, and he had sessions around that to look at his past and his trauma. I never thought we'd be in a place to do that, especially because I remember like the first self-development event that I ever did, which was actually before the arrest, because I was still curious around this work, but not fully embodied. But I remember coming back from that event, and I called my parents, and I was on the train in London just saying how amazing it was. And they both laughed at me and like made some joke about me being in the cult, and I was so offended. Now, like, they said this comment like, did you all get naked and dance around together? And I was so offended. Don't get me wrong, I've done that later on down the line. Like, I've been naked in big groups of people and danced around. But I was so hurt that they weren't supporting me on that journey, and they weren't open to this work. And this is why I tell my clients all the time to, like, it starts with you. You can't force anyone else to do it. Like, I was never going to force my parents to do this work, but it ripples out. This is how energy works. It ripples out to the people around you. And so my dad went just all in, did so much research himself as well around like fasting and diet, and he started with the TM meditation and Wim Hof breathing and multiple other things. And he decided to also get the chemo treatment. And he was going to do all of this alongside it. And like chemo, you have like 8 sessions or something. And he had already been starting this work. And after the first round of chemo, his bloods came back and they said he had no cancer in his system.
Wow.
After technically saying it was a terminal cancer diagnosis. And still, so that was 2 years ago. And he still has no cancer in his system.
That's awesome.
And you know, babe,
so
my mum and dad get here tomorrow. And
oh,
it's the
really?
first time I'm seeing them. Oh, I feel like I'm going to cry. Like,
congratulations.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
Wild. I'm going to see them for the first time. That's so beautiful. Yeah, we've been on such a big journey as a family, and it brought us so much closer as well. And we all started to look at our shit more. That's when I really started to get into fasting and researching all of that, and which is a whole other thing. But and then, you know, my mum's definitely been open to looking at her past trauma and pain as well. And it's just really beautiful how we can be on this journey together. And they're out now for 3 weeks. And
that's amazing.
Oh, God,
we're gonna have so much fun.
I know, babe, I know.
Do you have a whole itinerary plan for them?
Not yet, but I think we're going to drop in and be like, okay, what do we want to experience together? And take them to some really beautiful healing experiences and get to relax as well and just hang out. Like it feels really surreal.
Yeah. Tomorrow.
Yeah, wow. Tomorrow.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool that they're still together also. You know, my parents split up, and it's like that's a dream for me, what you're experiencing tomorrow, like for the next 3 weeks. But I know that's not going to happen with my family, because my parents are split up. So it's going to be one at a time, which is also good because, you know, they're still alive, they're still healthy. But yeah, it's a privilege, you know, to have both your parents come out and they're still in love, and it's beautiful. Yeah,
totally. I definitely don't take that for granted. I know so many people that their parents just aren't together anymore. And, you know, obviously all relationships have their stuff. My mum and dad definitely do. And when I'm with them, they're so loving with each other and they're so playful, and we laugh a lot. They laugh a lot. And I think that's what keeps them together. It's like they do have this deep love and they are best friends. And it's really inspiring to see that kind of love.
Do you think that gives you higher expectations for love with partners when you're going out to find love as well?
Yes and no, because I don't know if I've seen a relationship yet that I would want to model my own relationship off. I love my mum and dad and their relationship, and also there's other things that I want in my relationship as well. And I think we can take inspiration from different people, but the way that they love each other, the way that they laugh together, that is something that I definitely look up to and love about them.
So in closing, what would you say is the meaning of life in your perspective? Like, how do you think about it?
The meaning of life, babe. What a fucking question to end on.
For you, like when you think about life, because I know you have these, like I know you're very philosophical, like you like to think and process things. So what do you think it is?
What is the meaning of life for me? Definitely part of it is to evolve. And in that evolving, it's coming home. And I think the meaning of life is to experience that playfulness and that joy and that love, and also like the opposite of like the despair, the sadness, the heartbreak, the anger. Not that I would like voluntarily choose that, but they say bliss is the feeling of any emotion felt fully. And I think this human existence is about getting to feel, because it brings us into that ecstatic places. So it's about connection to ourselves, connection to our community, our friends. That is what makes my life fucking joyful. Like, don't get me, I need my own space. Like, I'm like an introverted extrovert, and I really recuperate when I'm in my own energy. But also, like, the meaning of life, I feel it's about connection, experiencing spirit, experiencing each other, experiencing myself. And I think naturally that comes with evolving, that comes with change, and it comes with feeling. And so I feel like it's like in being in full surrender to that evolution, to the connection, and like how everything is just intertwined. It's like this web of connection together, and making the most of that. That's what I would say the meaning of life is for me at this point in my life.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. I like that. That's why I asked it, because everyone has a different answer, you know?
What's yours?
The meaning of life for me is just to fully experience life as much as possible. And that means, you know, with the people you love, doing the things you love, and having the most amount of fun and enjoying our, 120 year experience as much as possible. So that's what it is for me.
Yeah.
Our last question, this just popped into my mind, just came up. Are you happy?
Good question. I feel like, interestingly, I don't really resonate with the word happy. Like, I laugh with my friends around how, like, we can just be so fucking bipolar. I feel the depths of emotion, and life is such a fucking paradox. In one breath, I can be feeling like such like despair and heartbreak about the world, about my internal life as well. And then in like a split second, I can be in fits of giggles, laughing at the joke of life and feeling inspiration and expansion in my body around all that's possible. And so I feel like I flip from being so fucking happy and joyful to being like, oh my fucking God, you know? And it can be exhausting. Yeah. But am I content? That's not the right word, because I feel like, you know, it's a trap, I know, but like we're always kind of after more. Like, being honest right now, I feel I'm coming to a close of my time here in Bali, because not to say that I'm never going to come back.
Yeah.
I fucking love this island, and it's given me so much. My soul family, so much healing, so much initiation. And at the same time, I feel so comfortable right now. And in that comfortability, that's a word, right?
I don't know, actually. You're asking the wrong person.
But you know what I mean, if it's not. It's like this slight dullness that I feel of like, I'm craving more passion, more aliveness. And we have it so easy here.
Yep.
I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that you can have this kind of lifestyle for this kind of price, being surrounded by these kind of people. And like, you know, within the space of like half an hour, we can be in like a deep ceremonial breathwork ceremony, and then you're in this like bougie fucking restaurant with, you know,
true.
We have it all here, and it's so amazing and it's so beautiful. And I feel like there's this next chapter for me right now. I'm at a crossroads. I've been here for four and a bit years, and I just noticed that my like, and this is why it's sometimes difficult to sit with, because on paper, I look at my life and I'm like, yeah, I've got it all, you know? Why wouldn't I be super happy? But my deeper knowing, and where it can sometimes be difficult to admit to myself, is like, actually, I want to change. My soul is craving a different environment, a different challenge. And I don't know what that looks like fully yet. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like there is something for me, and I'm actually leaving in like 6 weeks for, I don't know how long. Like my intention is to come back still, but honestly, I'm in this place right now where I'm so open to the possibilities and like really feeling a constant spark of inspiration in my life. Because don't get me wrong, I obviously feel that in my life when I'm working with my clients, when I'm sitting with the earth, and still I have to be honest that there's this like, I noticed this a slight dullness in my energy body, and I have to look at that and be honest with what might need to change. And sometimes that's difficult because our mind wants to convince us that it won't work, or like it's like we should be doing something else. But the shoulds are just a trap in life, and I'm just ready to take that leap and just see what's on the other side of that. So that's a complex answer to your question. And I hope that kind of gives you clarity on where I'm at.
Yeah, so you're feeling a bit of dullness, and you're feeling like you want to leave Bali because you feel like it sounds like it's an environmental thing. It's like just your environment is contributing to that feeling.
For sure, environment's so important for me. But like I said, life is a paradox.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel the dullness, and yeah, I'm feeling a change, and also I can feel just so excited and inspired in that moment as well. It's just such a paradox, and that's why it can be so confusing sometimes.
Yeah. You said should as a trap.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
In the sense that our ego may have this idea of who we need to become, or what we should be doing from society as well, or our family's preferences. Oh, I should take this job because it's offering me more money, even though my biggest passion is something else, and I could take the leap towards that. But I should stay here because it's giving me safety. You know, should in the sense of you're just dismissing your desire around and not allowing yourself to have it. Like, what if you allowed yourself to have it? What if you removed the shoulds? And instead of being like, oh, I should do this, if that wasn't an option, what would you do instead? Like if you didn't put that pressure of like, oh, I really should do that. Like I had this last year, and when I was living in Ubud for a year, I had my dream house. It was so beautiful, and I should stay there because I worked really hard to get to that place and get that house, and it felt so synchronistic and divine. And but I wasn't actually happy there in the end because I was so disconnected from my community because a lot of people were in Canggu. So taking the should off and allowing myself to have something different, what possibility is there for something else? And so when I asked my body, okay, would I want to move back to Canggu again? My ego always told me I'd never move back to Canggu again. So clicky, been there, done that. Like, and then I asked my body because I took the shoulds away and what my ego thought I should be doing, and my body felt so energized by it. I was like, what the fuck? I'm getting a yes from my body. This is so crazy. And in that moment, I made the decision there and then and told my landlord I was going to leave, and literally left a week later. And that's what happens when we take the shoulds off our life and we open up to the possibility of allowing ourselves to have something else. But it takes courage.
And trust in yourself. The courage to trust yourself. Awesome. I love it. You shared so much today and so openly as well. So I really appreciate that you didn't hold anything back and you shared very openly and honestly. And I don't know, for me, hearing how you share and how you show up is very inspirational for me, because that's the vision of myself that I have, like in my own way, but taking some of what you do and adding it to me, you know, taking a bit of Gabby's authenticity, you know, and how you show up and embodiment, like that's what you've embodied everything you're saying, so you are credible, you know.
Thank you, babe.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And just to give you a reflection, like I'm able to do that because you hold such a safe space and I feel your presence and I really value that. That is literally one of my like number one values in a man. It's that like full presence because it means that I can trust you and I can open. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And I feel blessed to have you in my life, babe.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So where can people find out more about you?
So my Instagram at I am Gabby Francis. I also have a website. It's in my in the links.
Yeah, we'll link it up in the description.
Yeah.
All right. I hope you enjoyed. This was Gabby Francis from London. Where are you from? Are you from London?
I'm actually from Cheltenham.
Oh, that's it, Cheltenham. I always get it wrong. Yeah, Cheltenham. Yeah, that's right. Okay. See you in the next one. Thank you, Gabby.
Thanks, babe.